Hello and welcome to the Voice of Intuition podcast. My name is Susan Jane and I believe that trusting your intuition is the best way to live your life with meaning and purpose. Each week you will hear about how you can connect, develop and trust your intuition through the wonderful array of guests we have on the show and my own personal experiences. Join me to understand how your intuition can guide you towards a life full of meaning and loving purpose. Hello and welcome to the Voice of Intuition. My name is Susan Jane and I'm your host for today. Now, today we have, in the past, we have talked about our powers, and these are the powers that we have, and these are the powers that we are going to need to use to go from the 3D realm to the 5D realm. Now, we've all talked about that and Aquarius and Pluto, but I have talked about the powers that we need to get there. Now, you'll find that back into another podcast, so have a look back at that one. The other thing, the first power that came to me was the scissor energy. Now, scissor energy was all about leveraging, as in the scissor lift. So it helps us leverage up through the stages. And the other aspect of it was the cutting aspect. Now, last week or last podcast, we talked about the cutting side of it, how to sever those ties that are holding you down. This week, we talk about restricting them, and we talk about restricting these ties or restricting this energy ties by using positive boundaries. And boundaries can often be quite challenging to put into place. How I have structured this podcast and the blog, you can read it on the blog too, how I've structured this is in a manner that is conducive to how we receive our intuitive messages. Now, I've done it this way because if you receive your intuitive messages in a physical manner, and that's your strongest way, then a stronger physical type boundary is probably better for you. If you are more on the emotional side of things, on the emotional scale, an emotional boundary is probably better for you. But with our intuitive natures, and you can get a quiz on my website, intuitivenature.com.au. There's a free quiz there so you can work out what your strongest intuitive nature is. And then when you get this understanding of your strongest intuitive nature, then you can get an understanding of what barrier or what boundary to put in first, okay? What is probably your strongest point at this moment. Now, in saying that, I have used a lot of the boundaries, and sometimes I've used a few of them at once, more than one, especially when there's a situation there that you're a little bit concerned about. But anyway, I'm going to go into that a little bit more. But the idea of the boundaries is more about sort of not having to actually cut those ties. Now, this is especially designed for people that you love, really. It's designed for family members that you have to put up with sometimes. It's designed for that sort of side of it. It's like, if you can imagine, you've got a great big tree and you've cut off some of those ties, or you've cut the tree down, you've got rid of some of those connections that you've had to you. Well, this one's more about still having the tree, but pruning it instead. Okay, so we just getting rid of some of those negative areas that we don't want and keeping that positive aspect. So really good for workmates, for work colleagues, like I said, for family, for ex-partners that you still have to deal with. You still have to meet for family weddings and different things like that, or meet because you're changing hands with the kids are having a stay over with somebody. It's all those sort of areas there. Especially, sometimes we have our children will have partners that we may not see eye to eye with, and it helps you then put those boundaries in place to help you with that sort of side to it, so you can still take on the positive aspects of them, but help control those negative ones, the ones that are sparking those little triggers in you. So in saying that, so you now know what's beneficial for you by putting in these boundaries. As an empath, I had a lot of problems with the emotional boundaries. I would be, especially in my ex-relationship, I would be emotionally manipulated quite often. Often happens when you've got an empath with a narcissist, and we do tend to attract each other when we're learning. Once we've learned, we usually are a lot better at that. But I would get emotionally manipulated quite quickly, quite easily, and it wasn't feeling right. So these are the sort of times where you go, hang on, I need to put a boundary in there, because I don't want to sever this tie. I don't want to just walk out. I want to create these boundaries. I experienced a lot of these 4 types. I'm putting these 4 types in. I experienced a lot of these in my relationship, and I worked my way through them. So again, what is beneficial for you now, you may change as you grow, or you may find that different people or different areas or different environments, you need to use different boundaries, okay? You need to use those different areas. Now, boundaries aren't to be confused with protection. Protection we will talk about in the next podcast. So that's quite a little bit different. So this is more about the boundaries, trying to put these boundaries in. So I'm going to go through the 4 boundaries to help you. I've got my little notes here. I'm going to go through the 4 boundaries to help you. Now, boundaries, they're not like walls. They're not like a particular barrier. They're not necessarily like, they can be flexible and they can be firm. So they can move and they can, you can twist, you can change boundaries. They're not so much as a physical aspect of something there to stop you. It's more about this spiritual aspect where we've got this ability to adjust them and move them. Now, the thing is with boundaries, we can let some people go through boundaries. I know in my situation now, I'm in a relationship. I've been in a relationship with my partner for quite a number of years. Now, he's got 3 kids. I've got 3 kids. And it's really strange because when I have my kids visiting, I'm fine with that. When his kids are visiting, I sometimes struggle with that. I can handle, stuff for a little while, but then I need my space. And same with my kids. I enjoy them being there, but then I need my space as well. Something that's really important to me is having my space. So boundaries there can be slightly different. I can handle a bit more time maybe with my children than with his children. His children have been raised. Nothing wrong with his children. They're great. They're really lovely young adults. But it's all about that understanding of how they have been raised and how I've raised mine and how different it is. So these boundaries aren't set in stone. They're not in concrete. They're not fixed. They can be moved. They can be flexible. They can be changed. They can be adjusted. But they also can be crossed, and you will feel that when they're crossed, okay? So where you may have a brick wall, which is, a brick wide and so tall, with a boundary, it could be a couple of kilometers wide or a couple of miles wide, and we can be flexing in that boundary somewhere. And then it's like, okay, no, you've gone too far and you've just stepped over it. So there's those areas there. Sometimes when you're in a group situation where you're having jokes, that there's jokes there, and people are telling jokes and laughing and enjoying that banter. But somebody may say something that just takes it a little bit too far. And it's like, oh, you've crossed that boundary. And that's where we have a look at it. So with jokes, I can take a lot of jokes. There's a lot of jokes about women. I mean, it's quite funny to watch some of them. Then there's other ones that are quite derogatory, and it's not nice to watch them. So it is a lot about how that boundary is for you, and it's not the same for everybody. So just be mindful of that. And again, they're very, very flexible, so we can adjust them to suit us. So the first boundary I want to talk about is more of the physical type boundaries. Now, I'm saying a physical boundary, but it's more for those people that receive their intuitive messages in a physical manner, okay? And remember, we are all intuitive, okay? We've all got the ability to be intuitive as part of human nature. And that's why I call it our intuitive natures. All right. So this is more for those who like that physical aspect of that, receiving those images or the messages, intuitive messages physically. One of the things I sort of go, well, we just don't go there. If it's a physical aspect and you're having trouble, it could be a place where you just don't go there. Okay, you just don't go there. There was my example was in a physical type barrier, not that it was a barrier, but a physical type boundary, I should say. Was if I knew where my ex-husband was likely to be, I wouldn't go there. You know, if I didn't have to go there, I wouldn't go there. So there was things that he did in a regular basis, you know, and I had the opportunity to go there if I wanted to or not go there. And if I could do it another way, I would do it another way. So those were sort of, that's a type of physical boundary where I kept myself physically away from that aspect. Another type of physical boundary is things like a piece of jewelry or a piece of jewelry. Say you're wearing a bracelet or a necklace or something. That can be classed as a physical boundary. And one of those areas that you look at and you go, oh, okay, I've got to remember not to do that, or I've got to put that boundary up. And it's a physical reminder to check your mindset. It's a physical reminder to check your emotion. So it's that physical aspect. And you can see by having something like that, you can see how you can use a couple of different boundaries to help you through the day. A physical boundary could be a stopwatch, a timer. Okay, that's enough. Had enough time. Time's out. One of those sort of areas when I start doing readings, when I start doing my life coaching or the counselling, I have to have some sort of a timer there. When I'm doing readings down at Coolangatta, down at the store, I have to have somebody there timing me because I lose track of time and I need to have that physical boundary. I need to have that physical reminder that that's the time. You know, people may want to go, people may want to stay, but that's the time frame. It gives me that understanding. So it's a real physical boundary for me. I'm going to get over the barrier word. Physical boundary for me. And again, I could have the bell ring and I can still talk if I want to. I can still keep going because that boundary is flexible and I can stop when I feel it's time to stop. So we can put these visual anchors for restriction or these physical boundaries in to help us go, you know, okay, that's enough of that. I've done that. I'm there, you know. Another example for me was, no, that's probably my example. My main example was with my ex-husband, not going to any places that I knew that he would be at that particular time. And that was during the early parts of the relationship breakup. Like there was times there when, excuse me, when I needed to be there, like a family gathering, when we were all there. And so I would set different boundaries. Actually, I'd set more protection up than boundaries. So yeah, that was in the early stages of the relationship breakdown. It's because I just could not go there. I knew I could be easily manipulated, so I couldn't go there. And that was my safe space, and that was my physical boundary. Oh, the other thing I do too is I keep a crystal. That my beautiful crystal. I keep a beautiful smoky quartz crystal near my computer, and that's a type of boundary for me. So that's a protection sort of a type of boundary for me. So I feel like those negative energies from the computer isn't getting me. So that's another type of boundary. And it's just a reminder. It's right near my abundance card, and it's a reminder of, oh, abundance, you know, we've got that there. Another boundary. Let's open that up. The next part I want to look at is for those emotional people, and I don't mean that in a bad way, the ones that receive their intuitive information emotionally. That's what, and I used to get a lot of this. It was that feeling. You get that feeling. You walk into a room and you go, oh, something's going on here. That's getting that emotional aspect of those intuitive messages. Now, we can receive intuitive messages all three ways: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritually. We can get them all three ways, all four ways. But we often have a stronger one. And we'll often cycle through those stronger ones too. So, at one stage there, emotional, intuitive messages were very, very strong for me. In fact, they got very overpowering sometimes. And And I had to really work on them. Was it my emotions or was it theirs? Things like that. But anyway, that's on the website, intuitivenature.com.au. With the emotional boundaries, my first one I thought about was, it's like, just say no. Saying no was one of the hardest things I had to do. And that was part of this emotional, putting those boundaries in, saying no. Again, being an empath, people would ask me to do this. People asked me to do that. I did a lot. I was quite on the go. Was president of the Playgroup Association when the kids were young. Moved buildings. I did lots of things. I played in a band. I had my own dance school by the age of 18. There was so many things that was going on. I had such a busy life. But what the old saying is, if you want something done, ask a busy woman. And that's what was happening to me. So I was getting all these requests coming in. Can you do this? Can you do this? Will you please do this? Pick this child up. Do this, do this. It was getting too much. Now, I call this an emotional boundary because it was affecting me emotionally. I felt obligated. I felt I needed to do that because somebody's asked me. I didn't want them to not like me. Oh, here we go. I wanted to make sure, I was friends with everybody. Yep, here we go again. So it was quite an emotional aspect of me. So for me to say no was my first emotional boundary that I could put in place. Even though I said it verbally, it was still an emotional one because I had to do that from the heart. And it was pretty hard. When you want to appease everybody, it's hard to say no. So I really get that. How I started that was by not saying no directly. Okay, I weasel my way around it. I did the softer approach. Some things were, I'm not feeling up to it, or let's do it another time, or I'd make up these excuses. They were basically excuses. I didn't want to do it. The thing about that was it was working for a little while, but when you turn around and say, no, I haven't got time to do it today because I've got to do this and this and this, then they've got the opportunity. Someone's got the opportunity to come back to you and say, well, can you do it tomorrow? No, I can't do it tomorrow because I've got this, 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 and this. Well, can you do it the next day? Can you do it on the weekend? Can you do it? And so it meant that it was all right to tell a little white lie to start with, but it meant the lies got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Not good. We didn't need that. And then you do get caught out. Like, oh, I thought you said you were busy today. Yeah, I was. But so I had to start changing it, and I had to stop justifying it and saying, no, I don't want to do that. Why don't you want to do that? Because I just don't. And you don't have to justify it anymore. You don't have to justify it. Now, I can say this because I've lived through it. I went through it. Took probably 10, 15 years to do it. But you now know that there is ways you can step through this. If you can't say no, you can say, let me think about it. Give yourself some breathing space. Give yourself the ability to step back and go, do I really want to do it? Do I really need to do it? Is this something that lights me up? Do I feel obligated because I have to do this? You get the understanding of it. You get to know what it feels like. And that's why I'm calling it the no, just say no, an emotional boundary, because it is about you connecting with your emotions and being able to speak it and say it. It's like, it doesn't feel right. I don't want to do that. And being able to project that out. Again, it isn't easy. Do little steps at the time if this is your area. If you feel, and to start with, you may even go, oh, somebody asks you something, and straight away you start to get that feeling. That's your intuition kicking in, okay? As an emotional intuition kicking in. You get that feeling, not again, I don't want to do that. Straight away you know that this is not right for you. Then you have to go through the process of trying to understand that and put that forward so it becomes right. Whether you change it around, whether you adjust it, or whether you just say no, that is up to you. That's your emotional boundary that you need to put in place. Okay? Sometimes I'll say, I'm not feeling up to it today. Let's talk another time. there's other ways that we can get through it. We don't have to always be doing what somebody else wants you to do. But the main thing is, and I noticed this with my partner, with his ex-partner, she would bombard him with something and blah, 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 and just bombard him with stuff. And he'd just say, yes, okay, just to shut her up. That's when I said, no, what you do is say, let me think about it. And then you have that space, you create that space so you can think about it. Really, really important. And that way of doing it is also good for the next one, which is about the mental boundaries. Okay, mental boundaries, you can do the same sort of thing. And his was probably more of a mental boundary, but she tried to make it emotional by bombarding him. So a mental boundary is the same, although I look at thinking smart for your mental boundaries. Now, it's because we're thinking about it. We're getting an understanding of it. We have a knowledge about it. And one of the main areas for mental boundaries is social media. Yes. Social media can really do our head in. We really need to think smart about it. Everything we consume, social media, the news, conversations, everything we consume mentally can have an effect on us. And this is where we need to start putting some boundaries in. I know I've done it before. I've been on the phone doing the old scroll, down the rabbit scroll. And, watching these videos. And of course, as soon as I'm watching a video, and it might be at the moment I was watching Bigfoot videos. As soon as I started watching Bigfoot videos, of course, the algorithm goes, oh, she likes that, puts more in front of you, right? And that keeps on putting it. And I was watching more and more and more and aliens. I love the space stuff, the UFOs, and then the ghost stuff. So, and of course, it's putting it all in front of me. So making me go further, well, not making me, but encouraging me to go further and further and stay there. And then you'd go, oh, an hour is gone, and you've been watching these videos about Bigfoot, UFOs and ghosts, and not that all of them are AI, but there's a lot of AI stuff happening out there. So a lot of it's not real. There's a lot of it that is real, but it's really hard to determine which ones are which. And what I found I was doing was just constantly watching them. And it started to create other feelings. And it was like, it started to shift my focus away. I should have had this podcast out. Well, in my views, I wanted it out last week or the week before, and I hadn't got it out. It's because I've been doing this scrolling. I've been setting my intentions the wrong way and going all over the place. So I needed to put these mental boundaries in to protect not only my head and my way of thinking, but to protect my other areas of life, that I was so focused on what was happening in this phone that I wasn't actually enjoying what was happening around me. And social media can do that. So we need to put those mental boundaries in. They can really do your head in if you're not doing that. And the other aspect is we start to look at the social media, and I go with the social media because it seems to be, the news is bad, but the social media, I feel, can be worse in some ways because it's in your face all the time. And even the news is on there. It's in your face all the time. So social media can be really challenging, especially if you start to get on the comparing areas. I've been on some groups in the social media, and they'll ask for a psychic, who's the best psychic? And I just sit there and watch all these other names come up, and I start to compare myself with them. And it's like, I'm not really a psychic. I'm an intuitive, but I'm not one of these people who can put myself out there. Yes, I can talk on a podcast because I'm basically looking at myself in the video. So I can do it on a podcast, but, to put my name out there on a social media group, I start to compare and contrast, and it's like, oh, no. And then I start getting down. It's stopping that way. Stop that scrolling, stop that. And it's not just about stopping the scroll. Start to look at some of the stuff that's more positive. So now I start to click onto, some nice affirmations, or here's some, and we start to bring in something different. So your feed is becoming a little bit more positive. That's your mental boundaries. So remember to do that. The last one I want to talk about is spiritual boundaries. Now, this is where we do start to move into our protection side, which we will talk about next week. Next week. Hey, let's try and get it out next week, at least next fortnight, latest. That's my intention. But the spiritual boundaries are a little bit harder because they are very, very unseen, and we really do need to start to connect with our intuition strongly in those intuitive ways. Now, as I said, the physical intuitive receives the message. Usually you go through the stages. So physically you receive the messages, then you start to feel them emotionally, then you start to get those mental areas, and then we go into the spiritual side of it. So when you get to the spiritual aspect, you are into that area of psychic, intuitive, clairvoyant. You're starting to really hone in on your tools of the trade. It doesn't stop you from using physical aspects. I used to always see my hands go blotchy when they're in a physical manner when somebody needed a healing. That was my sign. I knew somebody needed a healing. My hands would go all blotchy. So we still use the other areas, but once we start getting into the spiritual side of things, we start to get those downloads a lot easier and a lot clearer. I say, but it doesn't always work that way. Like everything, you have to start in the beginning, and you do start at the bottom and work your way through it, because you do start to get these intuitive messages and you think, am I going crazy? Like, was that me or was that something else? So you do get a little bit confusing. It can be a little bit daunting to start with when you're starting to get these areas coming through. But the best way to set spiritual boundaries is through visualization. So it's like visualizing different areas, and the visualization is like creating that protection. And that's why spiritual boundaries, we do go more into the protection side of things. One of the areas that I did, one of my examples that I want to bring forward very quickly, because I know I'm starting to jump into a bit of time here. One of the examples I had, we used to meet, there was a group of 4 of us that used to meet. Now, we were all very spiritual, the 4 of us, right into that side of things, and we were all in our own businesses, so we were all starting our own business. Now, I used to go there, and it used to be great. We'd exchange and we'd have these little things happening, and we'd bring things to the table, and we'd help each other, and I was really, really enjoying it. Then after about, I don't know, must have been about 6 months, energy started to change. Now, I wasn't really aware of it, but I would get in the car and I would feel really down. Like, I felt drained, I felt exhausted, I felt really down. And I'm thinking, they used to make me feel really, I used to feel really uplifted when we met. And now I've gone the complete opposite, and I was feeling really drained and really exhausted. And then there was a couple of times, like 2 weeks in a row, and I was in tears. I got into the car before. They didn't know about it. I'd get in the car and I'd be in tears. I'd be exhausted. And it was then I realized that we had a bit of an energy vampire happening there. Not that she was aware of it, but she was taking our energy without understanding that she was taking it. So I should have put some boundaries up. And I did try to put some boundaries up. I didn't understand about protection in those days. I would have just protected myself otherwise. But what I did was start to put some boundaries in place. So I went around to speak to her, and I sort of, said to her, this is how I've been feeling. And I'm thinking that this is happening. And unfortunately, she didn't take it very well. She felt I was attacking her, and I didn't mean to have that happen, and I probably didn't do it right. I don't know. I do take on responsibility for things like that. But I tried to put these spiritual boundaries in place, and I tried to do it on a physical realm or on a mental realm, and it probably wasn't quite working. So with the physical boundaries, I probably should have been putting in more protection. Now, the difference between protection and the boundaries, I would say boundaries now are more like visualizing the house in white light, or smudging. We do the smudging. We start to do those areas there. So it could be of a physical nature, it could be of a mental nature or an emotional nature, but we're creating these boundaries for ourselves and for our families in that spiritual realm. So sometimes the golden line, or, if you're feeling a little bit unsure, putting white light into it, put white light into an area. So not all spiritual connections are positive. So if something feels a little bit off, start to burn the sage, start to put in areas, even the dream catchers and things like that. All of those have that intention of actually creating that safe space for you. So the spiritual boundaries is a little bit more challenging in that aspect. It does go into all the other areas, but we know that they're all connected anyway. So just understand, if you're feeling very drained and very exhausted after being with somebody, then it's time to have a look at putting some spiritual boundaries in place. It's starting to look at putting, say, a golden line in a golden glow, a line in front of you, just to do that bit of a boundary and sort of go, okay, if they say something like that or do something like that. Oh, I know an example. I have had readers that are so in the sky, like off with the pixies, that they're not grounded enough. Now, this is where spiritual boundaries should be coming in. One particular person that I know of, she would just go off talking about UFOs and talk about angels and stuff like that, which was fine. I don't mind talking about things like that. But the stuff that she was saying was so unrealistic and so generic and hard to achieve that it wasn't grounded enough. And that's where you put your spiritual boundaries in. If somebody's turned around and said to you, oh, you just need to be, you just need to be more full of love and just send love. It's like, it needs to be a little bit more grounded in that, because if you're being attacked or if you're being abused or anything like that, you can't just send love. You've got to be a little bit more grounded and really get into that understanding of it. So people that are getting a little bit airy-fairy, that is where you sort of go, hang on. We need to ground that. That's the boundary we need to put in place. Ground that and get an understanding of it. So there's lots of little areas like that. So in restricting energy, you will actually create those, you cut those, sorry, not restrict any. When you're cutting energy, you restrict those ties, you cut those ties, they're gone, you leave them go, they will still join, you still need to keep cutting them for a little while. But when you're restricting energy, it's about being able to still connect with somebody, but not have to take on that negative energy from them. So you don't feel drained, you don't feel exhausted. That is all about our restricting. I'm running out of time. So just to be really mindful of that. The next podcast will be all about protecting your energy. So that'll help you if you are stuck with the spiritual boundaries. Protecting your energy will be a lot more into that side of it. Again, I will go through those 4 areas in it too, because there's 4 main areas I look at in that context, because it helps you connect with it. That feels right for me. I'm going to do that. Or those 2, I'll do those 2. So yeah, we'll go into it that way again. But that is all from us today, from me today. Have a great day. If you want to have a look at the podcast, or the blogs, it is on my website. And, of course, the little quiz is on my website. So intuitivenature.com.au. It is an Australian business. I am Susan Jane, and I will say bye for now. See you guys.